we are reaching a point when some system far away can know me better than my mother, and the interests are not necessarily aligned. Now, yes, we can use that also for good, but what I'm pointing out, that this is a kind of power that never existed before, and it could empower totalitarian and authoritarian regimes to do things that was simply technically impossible until today.
Yeah.
And you know, if you live in an open democracy, so okay, you can rely on all kinds of mechanisms to protect yourself. But thinking more globally about this issue, I think a key question is, how do you protect human attention from being hijacked by malevolent players who know you better than you know yourself, who know you better than your mother knows you? And this is a question that we never had to face before, because we never had, usually the malevolent players just didn't know me very well.
And one of the reasons why I think democratic countries over time tend to do better on serving what people want is because there's no metric to optimize the society. I think part of what the democratic process does is people get to decide on their own which of the dimensions in society matter the most to them in their lives.
If you can hijack people's attention and manipulate them, then people deciding on their own just doesn't help, because I don't realize it, that somebody manipulated me to think that this is what I want. And we are reaching the point when, for the first time in history, you can do that on a massive scale. So again, I speak a lot about the issue of free will in this regard. And the people that are easiest to manipulate are the people who believe in free will and who simply identify with whatever thought or desire pops up in their mind, because they cannot even imagine that this desire is not the result of my free will. This desire is the result of some external manipulation. Now, it may sound paranoid, and for most of history, it was probably paranoid because nobody had this kind of ability to do it on a massive scale. But here, like in Silicon Valley, the tools to do that on a massive scale have been developed over the last few decades. And they may have been developed with the best intentions. Some of them may have been developed with the intention of just selling stuff to people and selling products to people. But now the same tools that can be used to sell me something I don't really need can now be used to sell me a politician I really don't need, or an ideology that I really don't need. It's the same tool. It's the same hacking the human animal and manipulating what's happening inside.
But I would argue that the even more, the deeper question is about the intrinsic design of the systems, right?
Exactly.
So not just fighting the abuse. And there, I think that the incentives are more aligned towards a good outcome than a lot of critics might say. And here's why. I think that there's a difference between what people want first order and what they want second order over time, right? So right now you might just consume a video because you think it's silly or fun, and you wake up and or you kind of look up an hour later and you've watched a bunch of videos and you're like, well, what happened to my time? And okay, so maybe in the narrow short-term period you consumed some more content. And maybe you saw some more ads, so it seems like it's good for the business, but it actually really isn't over time, because people make decisions based on what they find valuable.
I think this is like the rock bottom, that this is the most important issue, that ultimately what I'm hearing from you and from many other people when I have these discussions is ultimately the customer is always right. The voter knows best. People know deep down, people know what is good for them. People make a choice. If they choose to do it, then it's good. That has been the bedrock of at least, Western democracies for centuries, for generations. And this is now where the big question mark is. Is it still true in a world where we have the technology to hack human beings and manipulate them like never before, that the customer is always right, that the voter knows best? Or have we gone past this point? And we can know, I mean, and the simple ultimate answer that, well, this is what people want and they know what's good for them, maybe it's no longer the case.
Well, yeah, I think that it's not clear to me that that has changed, but I think that that's a very deep question about democracy.
This is the deepest...
I don't think that that's a new question. I mean, I think it's people have always...
No, the question isn't new, the technology is new. I mean, if you lived in 19th century America and you didn't have these extremely powerful tools to decipher and influence people, then it was a different...
Well, let me actually frame this a different way, which is, I actually think, you know, for all the talk around is democracy being hurt by the current set of tools and the media and all this, I actually think that there's an argument the world is significantly more democratic now than it was in the past. I mean, the country was set up as, the US was set up as a republic, right? So a lot of the foundational rules limited the power of a lot of individuals being able to vote and have a voice, and checked the popular will at a lot of different stages, everything from the way that laws get written by Congress, right, and not by people. You know, so to everything to the Electoral College, and which a lot of people think today is undemocratic, but I mean, but it was put in place because of a set of values that a democratic republic would be better. I actually think what has happened today is that increasingly more people are enfranchised, and more people have a voice. More people are getting the vote, but increasingly people have a voice, more people have access to information. And
I agree that more people have more voice than ever before, both in the US and globally. I think you're absolutely right. My concern is to what extent we can trust the voice of people, to what extent I can trust my voice. Like we have this picture of the world that I have this voice inside me which tells me what is right and what is wrong. And the more I'm able to express this voice in the outside world and influence what's happening, and the more people can express their voices, it's better, it's more democratic. But what happens if at the same time that more people can express their voices, it's also easier to manipulate your inner voice? To what extent you can really trust that the thought that just popped up in your mind is the result of some free will and not the result of an extremely powerful algorithm that understands what's happening inside you and knows how to push the buttons and press the levers and is serving some external entity, and it has planted this thought or this desire that you now express. How do I know? The more we understand about the extremely complex world inside us, the less easy it is to simply trust what this inner voice is saying.
There can be an evolution that happens where, you know, a system shows information that you're going to be interested in, and if that's not managed well, that has the risk of pushing you down a path towards adopting a more extreme position or evolving the way you think about it over time. But I think most of the content, it resonates with people because it resonates with their lived experience. And to the extent that people are abusing that, and either trying to represent that they're someone who they're not, or trying to take advantage of a bug in human psychology where we might be more prone to an extremist idea, that's our job in either policing the platform, working with governments and different agencies, and making sure that we design our systems and our recommendation systems to not be promoting things that people might engage with in the near term, but over the long term will regret and resent us for having done that. And I think it's in our interest to get that right. And for a while, I think we didn't understand the depth of some of the problems and challenges that we face there. And there's certainly still a lot more to do. And when you're up against nation states, I mean, they're very sophisticated, so they're going to keep on evolving their tactics. But the thing that I think is really important is that the fundamental design of the systems, I do think, and our incentives are aligned with helping people